So a year and a day, how do you feel?
I feel a ton of anxiety knowing that I'm 35 days away from leaving my wife and kids, but I feel amazing considering it was really, in my opinion, the best possible outcome considering the depth of this case, right? And I just don't feel that I was ever going to get home confinement anyway. Maybe if I rode it all the way home, and I know Diane would argue that, but I still feel that the judge, who was amazing and very fair, wanted to make an example for future people that are bookmakers to deter them from possibly thinking, oh, I can just go do this and make a lot of money, and if worst case I only get home confinement and pay some taxes. I just think that was the message. That's my opinion.
So I've been to a lot of sentencing hearings. I had my ebbs and flows during it. So you're presenting, you're the one doing the selling in front of the judge. Like, what were you thinking throughout? Like, it's going to be maybe a year and a day, 15, 24 months. There was a question we're going to discuss, the judge asking the U.S. attorney, that I thought was very important. But like, what were you thinking throughout?
Throughout, I was thinking I wanted to get through all of my points. I had worked for hours and hours on what I was going to say to the judge, my argument, which really felt like a closing argument from a trial more than a sentencing. And I worked that hard on it, which I honestly don't always do because I know my cases. I can go in there and just
wing it,
yeah. Really. And I hate to say that, but I do and it's usually very successful. But this time I did not want to take any chance that I would forget anything. And I'll jot down notes. And as I did while the prosecutor was making her argument, I was taking notes of all the things. And you saw what my pad looked like. It was like,
and you would show me a lot of the paperwork, of what some of the stuff meant and what was going on.
Right.
Which I appreciated.
But, so I wanted to make sure I got through everything. When he started asking questions, I wasn't making any predictions. And, of course, I wanted the best outcome for Matt. And I know that he says he's happy with the outcome. I'm not, because I just felt that there were so many mitigating factors that he didn't take into consideration, especially, it was just an extraordinary case. That word I used over and over and over again in my argument. So I was frustrated. But as far as how did I feel while it was happening or what was I thinking, honestly, I wasn't thinking about where it was going. I didn't know what he was going to do. And I think it was the taxes, and Justin, you've had this experience over and over again. The tax issue, I think, was more serious to him. And that was the serious offense. It was an IRS case initially.
Sure.
The agent was an IRS agent. And I do think that was the issue for him.
Yeah, sending a message about paying your taxes. And I still believe personally that the bookmaking crime and the message of being high profile, I just think if I didn't go to prison, it really would have made him look bad.
And he said he was not taking that into consideration, that it was a high profile case.
Yeah.
But how can you not? There were 200 people there.
Yeah, I don't think he was as concerned about looking bad because, when you're a federal judge, you're appointed for life, so you don't have that influence. Judge Selna, Judge Carter, Judge Holcomb, they talk about this tax issue. They say you're an American, you have an obligation to pay taxes. I don't think it was the bookmaking. I don't think at all. I think he was persuaded by your argument where he had an obligation over the last 2 years to begin writing and rebuilding his life while the U.S. attorney's arguing. That's the reason you should send him to prison, the notoriety. It's like, should he sit in a cage for 2 years and do nothing while he waits to
well, and I said, it's not his fault that this became a high profile case. And I mentioned that, the journalist who brought this to light was in the courtroom. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I first took this case. This was a very straightforward case, sort of. For the most part.
Right.
But yeah, it was... I took him at his word when he said he was not taking that into consideration. I think, though, because the law says he has to deter crime by his sentences, that's what swayed him in that direction. Even though he acknowledged all of the mitigation, he almost said, yeah, there's a lot of mitigation, and I appreciate everything that you've done, but I'm still going to give you time, even though you did everything
Did you not have a number? He's getting... When I was sentenced... The government asked for 24 months, and I knew when Judge Wilson referenced some of my letters and that I'd made a restitution payment, I'm like, all right, I'm not getting 24 months, I get 18. Was there a point where you're like, okay, I'm not getting 15 or 21 or 36?
For me, to be honest, I thought the case was going bad at first.
Yeah. And it didn't start, it was trendy.
It started bad. And I say that because we already came in there with all her work. So she already did so much prior that the 15 months was already kind of a gift in my mind, truly. So like she was already fighting a battle that I knew that she probably was going to get some batted back down. But it's, he kept saying, I'm going to, I forget what the verbiage was, deny that, so to speak. And I kept thinking to myself, okay, am I going backwards right now? Am I 15 now, 18, 24? Because I've never been through this, right? But I also knew that at the end of the day, it's very hard for him to go too much higher from 15 months since the government was recommending that, in my opinion. So I felt comfortable with that. But because I've never been through this, I was getting a little nervous because she was fighting for stuff that, he wasn't really agreeing upon because he was saying it was already in the mitigation, so to speak. That's what I got out of it. And then as it got further along, and then she got so passionate about defending me and who I was, which actually made me very vulnerable when I went to speak to the judge. I started realizing that I could feel him feeling her, and then feeling me even, and then the even people weeping in the stands. My ex-wife's
his sports reference.
Yeah,
you can't help it.
In the audience.
But he was a bookmaker.
Yeah, not anymore. But I could feel like the courtroom itself, personally, changing. Like
he was very engaged. He listened to every single thing I said, and I have a lot of respect for him. I think he's extremely detail oriented. He's very, very smart. And I knew that he had read everything that I submitted. He commented on the letters that he received.
Yeah.
He said, your daughters, your wife, other service providers, he mentioned those things, and prison professors.
Right.
So I knew that he had read everything. I have to tell you just a little anecdote. The very first time I did a sentencing hearing was in front of Judge Carter. And I said, I don't know if the court has read my papers. Big mistake.
Yeah.
That's like an insult to them,
Carter
even though you're not meaning to, right?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes. So from that moment on, I've always said to the judge, I know you've read everything. There are just a few points I want to remind the court about.
That's smart. I could see that.
Oh my God. So I knew he had read everything. And again, there were certain things I couldn't talk about in open court because they were filed under seal. And so I just alluded to those things. And, he nodded, but he was totally engaged. He was thoroughly engaged. And he did thoroughly appreciate how many people were there to support you.
Yeah.
For me, even, because I knew there was going to be a lot of media. And so I said, friends and family, raise your hand just so the court could know who was friends and family versus media. And it was almost everyone in the room.
Right.
I was blown away, and I'm sure he was. In fact, I don't know if you remember, Judge Guilford used to count the number of people in the courtroom there to support my client.
And Judge Carter will ask people to identify themselves sometimes too.
Yeah.
Oh, really?